One of the questions that has unfortunately become all too common in American political discourse is, will there be a second civil war, or should we have a national divorce? Let's discuss. So I think anyone who even vaguely keeps up with politics understands that we are in a very divided time in American history. Most people agree that we've gotten to dangerous levels of division in this current era. And I think regardless of how you feel, I'm going to discuss more my own personal views on this in a second, but regardless of your opinion, I think we can all agree it's super sad that not that people are divided, that's something that's naturally going to happen, but that people are so divided that their honest solution for it, when asked, is a national divorce, another secession, or another civil war. Reading from Politico, a recent survey by the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia found that about 50% of Donald Trump voters and 40% of Joe Biden voters agreed to some extent with the proposition that the country should split up, with either red or blue states seceding. So what most people imagine when they think of a national divorce that isn't bloody, so one that is perfectly amicable and we just sort this all out peacefully, is that either a block of blue states or a block of red states would secede. The other states that are in that same color, that same party, would join them, creating another country. So when people are asked about some form of that hypothetical, 50% of Donald Trump voters and 40% of Joe Biden voters say, yeah, I think it's time for that. Now, again, just please hold. I'm going to give my opinion on this, but I want to just kind of lay the groundwork beforehand. So that's a national divorce that would be peaceful in theory. But then when people are polled, do you think there's going to be another civil war? So not do you think there should be, but do you think there will be another civil war? From Brookings, a 2021 national survey by pollster John Zogby found a plurality of Americans, 46%, believed a future civil war was likely. That is so disturbing. And to be clear, if you believe that a civil war is in the near future, that definitely doesn't mean that 43% of Americans want a civil war to happen or are wanting to commit violence on the other side. It just means people look at the current political landscape, look at the division, and think, I think we're on course to a civil war. So the way that I want to break up my opinions on this is purely the feelings that I have about this, and then logistically why this is completely unlikely and would be just so stupid for anybody to push for. And by that, I mean, obviously a civil war. We don't want violence within our own country, but then also a national secession. If you're some Republican, or even if you're a liberal and you're living in California thinking it'd be so cool if California seceded and then other blue states joined us and we could just be a liberal utopia. No, but especially if you're a Republican pushing for this, logistically and especially economically, this would be a terrible idea. But before we get into the logistics, just my feelings about this. So as I said earlier, whenever I hear stories like this and I hear people pushing for, we can't live with one another anymore, we gotta do a national secession, a national divorce, honestly, I feel a deeper level of sadness than covering pretty much any other topic in politics. I mean, there's a lot of things we have to cover that are sad and disturbing and all those things, but looking at the country that you love and you feel like your fellow members of that country also love so against one another that they want to tear down and completely split up the country, that is just such a deeply, deeply sad thing to hear. And of course, I understand we do have some real divisions, and it feels like at times the left's vision and the right's vision of the future of America is just so different. It's hard to think of a possible compromise. In such a divided time, that is our job, that is our responsibility in a democracy, is to figure out how do we make this work even though we feel so different, so divided, so separated in our opinions. And while the division is real, it is not something that can't be overcome. There is an entire media universe that makes its money by overplaying the divisions in our country. As I've talked about on the show, when you watch right-wing media, it's like, no wonder they think the left is trying to tear down America. And sometimes when you watch left-wing media, same thing. And while obviously I think the left does a better job of being honest, there is definite problems with the way that liberal media presents stories, leaves out certain facts, highlights certain aspects of stories to make you more enraged. And of course, right-wing media does that to a massive extent. The thing that will get eyeballs on their show, publication, newspaper, whatever it is the most radical, enraging story possible. And because they're trying to work for profit, that is what they're going to put out there. And so we take real division and then we put everyone in their social media echo chambers where all they hear is the other side is terrible. They want to tear down the country. They hate you. And then, as most people I think now would agree, we're living in completely different realities, so there's no way we could find a compromise because we don't even agree on what we're compromising about. And I think the main contributor to why America is so divided right now is the introduction of social media into the political landscape. So now you can completely wall yourself in with an entire media diet that tells you all the things you want to hear. You never have to be given information that will make you uncomfortable, and thus you get crafted for you this reality that may or may not be aligned with actual reality. And so because people are existing in these different realities, it's nearly impossible for us to meet each other where we are. So we should not even be thinking about any idea of a civil war. No state should be thinking about seceding, which the actual governments aren't, but people shouldn't be talking about it. We should spend all the energy we would spend on figuring out logistically how to separate our country into overcoming those unique hurdles we now have and reopening the dialogue, understanding what each other are trying to say, and find some common ground. Now, let me be real with you. It's not like 100% of the country, we're all gonna figure it out and go arm in arm together. I do believe there's a sliver of the country, and it might be a bigger sliver than we want to admit, possibly around 20%, that's just too far gone. We're not going to get them back checked into reality. But for everyone else, there is a real chance. We're not going to agree on every little policy thing, but we can at least come together enough and agree on certain basic fundamental values and then hash it out from there on the specifics. It really makes me angry that people even entertain this question, because we should go to our graves, if you have any ounce of care or love for the country, wanting to keep it together. All America is a concept, an umbrella that we all live under and we all subscribe to. And so the second that we give up on being one people, everything and anything that was good about that American concept dissolves. So my ask to all of you is, instead of thinking, oh yeah, how would we break up the country? Instead think, how do we keep it together? How do we overcome these crazy, unprecedented hurdles? And honestly, how do we push out a smaller group of people out of the discussion who aren't even reasonable, but then everyone else who still has very different views, to be clear, how do we get them to agree on some core things so that we can move forward? So those are my feelings. Just to really quickly go through the logistical stuff. This is so different than the actual Civil War, because then there was a very clear geographic line that you could draw, whereas now we are very divided, but not geographically divided. It very much is an urban and rural divide. So for example, Texas, where I live, most of the cities are blue, but then all the rural area is red. So now do millions and millions of people who are Democrats, they have to move out of Texas or something? And then same thing with blue states that have a big city that's very blue that makes the whole state go blue, but then all the rural areas around it are red. Do we just say, pack up, conservatives? I mean, it makes no sense logistically in that sense. And also, if you really did make an entire country of red states, economically that would be terrible and would lead to a massively impoverished country. The states with the highest percent of poverty in the United States are Mississippi, Louisiana, New Mexico, Kentucky, Arkansas, West Virginia, Alabama, and then, so those are all red states. The District of Columbia, that's the one blue area, and then South Carolina and Georgia. All the poor states in our country are red, and it is many of those red states that get back more federal money than they pay in taxes. And so I would not wish upon all of these conservative states to live in a very, very impoverished country that now doesn't have enough funds to sustain people in need. Why would we want to do that to millions of people? We are all as American as the next person. There are no real Americans and then those fake whatever Americans. If we all believe in the promise and the concept of America, then we have to fight to keep it together. And the way that we do that is suck it up and try to talk to one another, see where we have some common ground. That's what I try so much on the show to do, is say my opinions. I'm on the left, I'm progressive, blah, 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 blah. But in a way that isn't calling people's names, isn't being offensive needlessly, so that people on the other side can watch it, disagree with me, but see the points that I'm making and hopefully find some common ground with me. Don't allow the media machine that does really well if it pumps out enraging stuff to teach you it's completely hopeless and we shouldn't even try to unite with anybody. That's not to say that many of the views of the other side aren't reprehensible. Y'all know that's how I feel. It's to say that regardless of how horrid the views are, we can't give up on America. Here's what else you need to know today. Russia halts oil and gas shipments to Poland and Bulgaria, further escalating the tension between Russia and the West. As everyone has heard by now, Elon Musk has reached a deal with Twitter to purchase the company for $44 billion. Emmanuel Macron's win in France is a very good thing because we're seeing a rise of far-right candidates and movements across the world, and Macron's victory is a great rejection of that trend by France. And finally, a New York judge finds Donald Trump to be in contempt of court for failing to comply with a subpoena from the Attorney General, who sought access to some documents in relation to him and his company. Be well, everybody.